Please welcome Mr. Murray Anderson, Managing Director of API Events that is carrying this event. Great applause for him. Murray.
Good afternoon, bonjour, sabona, hello. Welcome to the second annual Morocco Showcase brought to you by API and Smith. Today, we're here again to highlight the opportunities in Morocco and the region. And I'm pleased to welcome over the next 2 days over 300 delegates from about 10 countries. It comes and goes, but you know, we've got people from Spain, South Africa, Turkey, Kenya, the UAE, France, and a few other countries, the US as well. In a year of growth, changes and global volatility, Morocco is a beacon of opportunity, with tourist arrivals growing, surging FDI investment, and continued investor interest in the market. The exciting aspect is that Morocco is a sustainable market. Yes, the mega events of AFCON and FIFA are levers for growth and awareness, but the country's beauty, people, and natural treasures have placed it firmly on the map and created an ecosystem which is first in Africa. If I compare it to my home country of South Africa, I can only stand in envy as I see the continued development and evolution of the market. I think take a second to see the construction, all the cranes and new buildings emerging. I took a few long walks over the past few days and, you know, literally my mouth is like hanging open. I just came from Dubai and I mean, it's a bit crazy there, but yeah, there's so much development if I compare it to any other markets. And I know I work in about 8 countries in Africa. I would like to also just thank Smith under the leadership of our friend and partner, Imad Barakat, and his team, Nada and Yunus. Thank you so much for your support once again in making this event a success. And the work that you do in catalyzing the opportunities in Morocco. I think, you know, a big hand of applause should go to Smith. But just go and talk a little bit about like the program and this year and what we're trying to do in this year's program is, I think we're just always trying to evolve the conversation, get a deeper conversation, because our plan is to be here for several years. And I think this year's program, we're talking similar topics, but we also got some new guest speakers, interesting takes from technology, real estate development. We've got a little bit on Francophone Africa, and thank you again for all the leaders coming to speak. As an event, the speakers are the glue and the spark of the conversation. And to our speakers, I thank you for your time, energy, in making the discussions fruitful. This year, there are some returning old faces and many new ones, and I'm excited to see what we get through. As an event and business, our value is our ability to connect developers to brands, hospitality, operators, and financiers. And this is who API is. We're not simply a hotel conference company. Our reason for being is to connect capital, brands, developers, and an entire ecosystem together. And we like to see deals happen, and I hope to see some deals happen over the next 2 days. Today would not be possible without the support of our sponsors, including Smith, Westmont, Accor, our diamond sponsor, our silver sponsors and reception partner, EF Moroccan Hilton Foundation, as well as Marriott, Radisson, Araday Capital, Ream Partners, Orwood, and RISMA. Just a quick note, after today's proceedings, you're invited to a cocktail reception on the 3rd floor, hosted by EF Morocco and the Hilton Foundation. One new sponsor and loyal partner, Kafisi Africa, has also recently expanded into Morocco, and they've also expanded into Dubai. I saw their building last week. And tomorrow we will close the conference at their beautiful new building. Just please confirm your attendance via email or at reception. Just last one, and then if I go to our other sponsors, also I'd like to thank IFC Edge for coming through to Morocco. IFC is a big partner of APIs across Africa, and we have Kushinga later, the Africa lead, showcasing the opportunities in green financing. And last to our industry sponsors, Aleph, TUI, Canary Technologies, TGP International, Investor Group, ALH, Technogym, Wyndham, Majlis Pro, and Peter Brown and AMS Africa. Thank you. Every bit helps in making these events successful. They take a long time to plan, and they're not cheap. So thank you all for coming today and for making this a successful and deeper event for 2025. The success of API's portfolio of events is not that we know best, it's because these events are local and homegrown. So I encourage you to continue using the platform and driving investments into Morocco. All we want to do is see things happen in Morocco, and if we can bring investors to the market, that makes us happy. So without further ado, thank you very much, and let's get started.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Morris. So make things happen in Morocco. A lot of things are happening. And let's continue. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Ahmed Barakat, CEO of Smith Morocco, co-organizer of the Morocco Showcase Summit.
Thank you, Murray. Thank you for those nice words. You are welcome in your country, second country. And I think that it's an important event. And I thank you are gathering us. Thank you for gathering us. And thanks for all of you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's an honor to welcome you to the second edition of the Morocco Showcase. We gather today with a shared ambition to accelerate investment, to inspire innovation, and shape the future of tourism across Morocco, across Africa, and across the world. I think it's important. I extend a warm welcome to all of our partners, investors, and industry leaders who have joined us from around the world. Your presence reflects the confidence you place in Morocco, its stability, its vision, and the opportunities to continue to create. Ladies and gentlemen, in Morocco, tourism continues to progress under the clairvoyant vision of His Majesty, the King Mohammed VI. May God assist him. The vision, supported by public policies and strong national capacity for transformation, has enabled our sector to advance resilience and ambition. The momentum we witness today with the rise in investments, solid performance, and the renewed investor trust is the result of a coherent and a forward-looking strategy in Morocco. Morocco is charting a distinct path rooted in investment, innovation, and sustainability. We are redefining tourism models to build an ecosystem that is comprehensive, that is competitive, that is responsible, and deeply connected to our cultural and territorial identities. These sustained efforts are yielding tangible results. You can see major upgrades to infrastructures. Just around Casablanca, it's amazing. In less than 6 months, we saw a big difference. Expanded air connectivity. We are trying to triple the connectivity since 2023. So things are happening. I hope more than 20 million tourists will be in Morocco. Will be here in Morocco at the end of the year. I hope, let's say 20. And it's inspiring. We see that offer is modernizing itself, and we are structuring the investor support. It's important when you see the charters. We have the SMEs charters, and we have the big investment charters. And as you can see, it was adapted, and you can get until 30% cashback on equity of the capex if you are in destination like Dakhla or destination like in the northeast, it's something very important. It's like 20% if you are in Casablanca or in Rabat, it's major destination, and even that you have a very important cashback on the capex. So public and private initiatives are further reinforcing this dynamic, and when we see this summit today, we see that there is a link between private, but there is a link between private and public, and it's important. It's important to develop more entertainment projects, and we are working on, and it's important to renovate beds. I can tell you that since we discussed in 2023, today more 100,000 beds are under renovation. So it's very important for our country because we want to improve the quality of the offer, we want to improve the quality of the service, and of course, that creates jobs and creates more value for us. As additional beds, in 3 years, we did more than 42,000 new beds. So we still are in average of 1 billion euro investment each year for the investment for the tourism investment sector. So it's important. So the coming years will be transformational for Morocco. The 2030 FIFA World Cup and another major global events like La CAF in few days or in few weeks are catalyst for the investments for us, are territorial development, and are enhanced international visibility. It's important as well for us. So those events will significantly strengthen tourism infrastructure, transportation network, visitor services across the country. Their triple effect will generate strong demand across the entire tourism value chain: hotel and resorts, leisure, restaurant, entertainment, and many other impacts. This represents an unprecedented opportunity for investors and operators like this one. So Morocco stands as a pivotal moment guided by this strong leadership and an unwavering commitment to excellence. For us, it's important to have the best offer, to have the best product, and to have a nice product. So I invite you to explore new ideas if you have. Connection, to work together, private with private. We need more investment. It's important for us. We are still waiting for 100,000 beds to 2030. It's important. We are talking about 26 million tourists coming to Morocco by 2030. But I hope that we'll have more and more by this World Cup. So thank you for your trust, your engagement, and your presence today. I wish you an inspired discussion and highly productive participation in this second edition, making this event a reality and for bringing all of us together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ahmed. Okay, so now let's dive deeply into our topics. We've talked a lot in our introductions about the opportunity that represents Morocco for tourism investments. That's going to be the topic of our first speaker. But before welcoming him, I'm going to please give a message to all our speakers. If you see the agenda, we got a lot of speakers that will be here this afternoon and today. So I will please, gently, warmly ask you to respect the time. We have a timer here, so I will be there 2 minutes before the end of your intervention. I will kindly ask you to come to the conclusion. Please, welcome to dive into figures, I guess, about the Morocco opportunity. Please welcome Mr. Aaron Cameron from Westmont.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. My name's Ewan Cameron. Gosh, I'm trying to do this properly. There we go. I represent Westmont Hospitality Group. We're a private family office, and we specialise in investing and operating hospitality assets. I have about 20 minutes, and my intention is really just to give you a feel for who we are as Westmont, but more importantly, why we've selected to invest in Morocco. So Westmont is, as I said, a co-investor. So we invest with our own capital and other institutional type capital to establish successful hospitality platforms in multiple jurisdictions. So we're in 4 different continents today, and we really focus on taking a local view that supports, a global view rather, that supports local teams and local expertise. So it's very much a case of within each of the platforms, we have a specialist team that really understand the dynamics of investing and generating investment returns from that. And then the final piece is that we work with not just institutional type investors, we also work with other types of capital and make sure that by bringing debt, capital, and all the different elements of capital stuck together, we can then generate investor returns. Because ultimately, we're not in this for anything more than to generate a return, and during that process to make sure that we have a positive impact. So let me just give you a feel for what we've done here in Morocco. So we've been active in this market since 2005, 2006. Today we have 3 different operating businesses in Morocco. We employ just shy of 500 people. And if you take, for instance, the 4 Seasons in Marrakesh, that's a really good example of, I would say, harmony between an international brand, a really good operating model, and a strong asset. And that harmony is leading in Marrakesh, and it's an international icon. Then if you come to here, which is the Marriott Casablanca, I'm really pleased to welcome you to the Marriott Casablanca. This asset has been on a journey, but it's not just the bricks and mortar, it's the enterprise. So when we acquired this asset, it's fair to say it was under, the P&L was depleted. 2, the asset was undercapitalized. There was lack of CapEx over multiple years. The employees and the team felt neglected and underdeveloped. And you could see it in the performance, not just the figure, the profitability of the business. You could see it in market share, and you could also see it in guest satisfaction terms. So when we acquired this asset, we very much bought it with an intention to do a turnaround. And I hope you'll see from not just the experience here in the conference, but if you're a guest in the hotel, the interactions you have with the team, you'll see the fact that we absolutely have retooled and improved the team. I'd like to say that we've actually moved a lot of expats. The majority of the team now is a Moroccan team. We've enabled that team. We've given them support and encouragement. And to be honest, I've been really impressed by the quality and the response we've had from the team as we've given them more responsibility. And today, this asset's the market leader in Casablanca. We've taken on the competition. We've deployed the capital, and it's meant it's a success, not just in our terms with regard to commercial returns, but also from a customer as well as a brand perspective. So let's get into a little bit more detail about why Morocco. Because as I mentioned, we're lucky in the fact that we can deploy capital in multiple different jurisdictions. So maybe by me giving you a little bit of insight into why we invested here, it would then give you some sense of why you should maybe prioritize Morocco in your investment list. So I'm struggling a bit here. I can't really see the screen, so I've got a bit of a height defect. But here, there really is just some clear data to try and give you a sense of where Morocco sits against other comparable size countries. So if you take the likes of Poland, Malaysia, Canada, Morocco has a very similar number of people, so very similar size population. But what the outlier is the growth. Morocco is a fast-growing economy. And what that does is it gives you a sense of regard to the fact that what the opportunities are in the future as much as what the opportunities are today. And one of the trends that we look at, there's 3 primary trends that we tend to track very heavily. One of the trends I'll talk to here, and I'll come to the other 2 later if I may, is population. And it's really trying to understand what is that growth and where is that growth located within the economy. If I may, I would like to refer to Edward Glacier, and if I can, I'll read this quote out, because I think it really encapsulates, when you look at real estate, how important a city is. Cities enable the magnification of humanity's strengths. They are able to make us richer, they make us smarter, they make us innovate more, because cities enable us to learn from each other. So when we're looking at population at market level, we want to really understand where the urbanisation is. Where is that population moving into centres? Because economically that has a multiplier effect. And just one other thing that Westmont's particularly likes about Morocco is the fact that there seems to be a shared principle in the fact that we at Westmont always like to underpromise. When we're sitting down with co-investors, we try and be very realistic with regard to what the expectations are with regard to return. Morocco does exactly the same. Morocco, as you may be aware, at the middle of this year was expecting to do a GDP growth of just under 4%. Recently, the World Bank has upgraded that to 4.4. So clearly, this country is not trying to exaggerate its success. In some respects, it's shy about its success. Another area I think that we really should think about is where you are in partnership terms. And Imad's point's very well taken. You don't feel as though you're walking alone. And in Morocco, that's a genuine partnership. The government is investing where the government can. It's investing in infrastructure. The high-speed rail connectivity from Casablanca all the way to Tangier is a tangible, real example of great infrastructure that enables people to do business and to connect the two political hubs, as well as the trade port of Tangier. 40 minutes to Rabat, just over 2 hours to get to Tangier. That's revolutionary if you're trying to do business within the economy. Then you look with regard to energy. When I first came to Morocco, people used to talk to me about the fact that we didn't have hydrocarbon deposits. We were different from other parts of particularly the GCC and also within Africa. In the last 10 years, Morocco's taken that, if you like, disadvantage and converted that into an advantage. Morocco's now leading when it comes to renewables. And then when you think about port and trade, Morocco has absolutely put itself at the pinnacle of international trade, not by just the accident of its location, but also by its practice. The Tangier Med port is the largest port in the Mediterranean. It is classified as one of the most efficient ports in the world. It's just recently got an award for being one of the 5th most efficient ports. And if you're a business person, you're thinking about friction in your supply chain, friction costs time. Tangier is a port you want to do business. And that effectively is the front room of Morocco. So to see the investment, not just in having a great port, but more importantly, make sure it efficiently operates and it's amongst the best in the world. It's just another example for me as an investor of how serious Morocco is about not just competing, but being the best when it competes. And then as Imad mentioned, the growth of tourism has been exceptional. You know, again and again, we've sat down with the ministry and they've talked about tourism numbers of, can we get to 8? Could we get to 10? Well, this year we were talking about getting to 18 million. Imad's just let it out of the bag. It looks as though Morocco will generate 20 million tourists in 2025. This is a high growth economy with a high growth tourism sector. So I've talked about people, I've talked about growth, I've talked about infrastructure, but as an investor, you want to understand what the capital flows are and what the capacities are to structure deals. Now, there's still more work to be done here. It is clear that there is an intent from the private as well as the public sector to unlock more capital within the Moroccan market. I'm encouraged by the fact that the Casablancan stock market has grown 20% in the last 12 months, for instance. There's a clear intention to boost mid-cap enterprises on the stock market, and that interests me not just with regard to seeing more liquidity, but secondly, when I contemplate an exit, to see a strong IPO market in the future, in the medium term, that's encouraging with regard to exit routes. And then finally, there is undoubtedly capital that's sitting within pension funds and insurance funds that could be deployed more effectively and could be put to work. There is an intent again to release at least 10 billion euros of that capital in equities and in infrastructure. So again, that moment I mentioned before with regard to partnership So where do we rank as Morocco when you're looking at, when you're looking at the international investment landscape? Reality is, this is actually not a particularly difficult landscape to navigate. We talk about safari in Africa. In Tanzania, in Morocco, it's not a particularly difficult landscape to navigate. But when you then think about where we rank against other international destinations, within Westmont, we talk a lot about Morocco being, if you like, the Mexico of Europe. It's that outpost where you're able to take the advantages that we have and export those strengths and that capacity into the second largest consumer market. And when you see it in those contexts, it starts to change your prioritization with regard to where you would invest. So I've mentioned before, we have 3 trends that we're tracking. Urbanization is a really important pillar of that. And if you look at the growth of consumer spend in Morocco, it doubled between 2000 and 2014. Consumer spend then doubled again in 2014 and 2024. Today, consumer spend is over 100 billion euros per annum. That's the urbanization muscle that I mentioned earlier. Then when it comes to technology, this country is not shy, not just with regard to embracing it, but absolutely harnessing it. I mentioned what's happening at Tangier Med Port, but also think about what's happening in aviation. This country has grown to 2.5 exports of aerospace parts and apparatus in the last 16 years. Now, that's in a very competitive market, but it's also a very technical market, very heavy engineering. And do you realize that 40% of the workers in Morocco's aviation industry are female? So not only has the population embraced new technology and put itself at the pinnacle of aviation, they've also made sure that it's an equal distribution between male and female with regard to driving that employment, and that's got to be celebrated. And another thing that's interested me in the technology sector is there are 23,000 engineers qualified every year in Morocco. So if you're investing in manufacturing, you're investing in pharmaceuticals, you're investing in life sciences, investing in manufacture of cars, to have that number of engineers coming through the education system every year is a competitive advantage when you look at other markets. And then, as I mentioned earlier about electrification, Morocco has been very successful at diversifying itself away from hydrocarbons and the dependency that it used to have, and it's turning that to a competitive advantage. So we all know today about the cost of electricity. In Morocco, our electricity it's circa 70% of the global average. So it's lower cost power than you would do in other markets. That definitely attracts me as an investor to why would I want to invest in that market. The other thing that's interesting to note is the fact that Morocco has a USP in the fact that it has unrestricted trade, it's got a trade agreement rather, with both America and with the EU. Again, it's taking that geographical location and using that to achieve economic growth through trade with the two largest consumer markets I mentioned previously. And the other interesting fact here is about population I mentioned before, but the fact the growth rate is double what's the average for Europe. But maybe one of the interesting things you might be surprised to learn is that the average take-home salary here is relatively high when you look at other emerging markets. At 1,500 euros a year, it does mean that those employees are able to generate a reasonable return, but also what it does mean is as an employer, you're thinking about what else you can do to replace too much dependency on human labor and use technology. That's something that Morocco's doing to its advantage. When you look at industrial history, you find that countries that have had leaps of technology, they've done it because labor costs are high, not because labor costs are low. And this is an interesting slide here, just to kind of think to, we all get here by flight. Some people come by ferry, but majority are coming by flying. Morocco's got 2 hubs. So to have 2 hubs really connects the world. But as my former colleague says here, you know, if you're an investor, an airport that has direct connectivity to over 100 destinations is not just convenient, it gives you the confidence to put sustained capital at work, because you know that others will follow where you have tread. Access follows investment. or rather investment follows access. To give you some data from the hospitality industry specifically, if I may, and I hate to use the term COVID-19, but it's always a benchmark. When does your sector grow past where we were 2019 pre the pandemic? Globally, unfortunately, at the end of 2024, we didn't quite hit it. So the number of arrivals in tourism terms globally was still just marginally below where they were before the pandemic. The only two outliers that are separate from that conclusion are Africa and the Middle East. Both those markets have excelled with regard to growth in the last 2-3 years. They're ahead of where they were in 2019. As you can see, to hospitality terms, we've turned the corner and we've come back, and the trend is looking as though it's going to continue to get stronger. So, if I may bring my analysis to conclusion, I think you'll find that from how we look at real estate investing is that yes, we do invest in leisure destinations and we see those as opportunistic. But actually, so often real estate is a coefficient of infrastructure. We see buildings, whether that's commercial offices, whether that's residential, whether that's hospitality and other types of commercial real estate, they're a complement and quite often they're part of the infrastructure that make a city. So when we're looking at investing, we're trying to find where those future nodes are, where the urbanization triggers are going to be. And that's where I think the growth in the trends is going to be, is that you're going to find that around the main urban centres, where there's a gap between demand and supply, simple economics, that's where we think will be where the opportunities will be, and that's where the sustainability will be with regard to generating returns. And those returns will come through not just in investor returns, it'll also come in growing the economy, as I mentioned earlier. As you strengthen cities, there's a multiplier effect, so the overall economy will increase. I think it's fair to say that there are still some headwinds, such as visa control in tourism terms, is something that's still a barrier to trade. We want to have open borders and allow the free movement of tourists and business people as much as we can. And then when you're thinking about your prioritisation, thinking about those ports, thinking about those rail connections, thinking about those hubs, because that's where we can build scale and that's where we think we can get strong returns. And that opens up to second and third market level. And as I mentioned before, if you want to look at IPOs, you want to be in a position where you've got a bit of a story to tell with regard to where the growth is going to come from. And if I may, just to give you another indication, today and tomorrow we'll talk a lot about Morocco, but I think it's important to remember that Marrakesh particularly, it's not a local destination, it's a global destination. You know, Marrakesh has had a phenomenal success over the last 3 years, and it's positioned itself as one of the top destinations globally. Now, that's not just in demand terms, that's by the customer. The customer is saying quite clearly that they'll pay a lot of money to enjoy the experience of Marrakesh. It's now our responsibility in hospitality and the wider economy to try and get those travellers and those visitors that come to Marrakesh to then traverse around the whole kingdom and experience more of Morocco. And if I may, in conclusion, I would ask you all to experience more of the kingdom. And hopefully from my slides, it's given you a sense that yes, all my brothers out there and all my sisters out there, I think together we should join hands and let's go. And if I may, I'll invite you all to come and surf the wave of growth that we foresee in Morocco. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for this brief and complete overview of why Morocco is an opportunity. And thank you so much. I'm going to switch to French because the following sessions will be in French. Donc, mesdames et messieurs, je vais avoir le plaisir pendant une petite demi-heure de discuter avec Monsieur Xavier Grange, qui est CEO d'Accor, et on va parler de la manière avec laquelle un groupe comme Accor accompagne au-delà du sponsoring, de grands événements sportifs. De quelle manière? On va essayer de discuter de ça. Ça sera le fil rouge de notre discussion. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous prie d'accueillir Monsieur Xavier Grange. Alors Xavier, je vous donne un micro. Bon, comment ça va déjà?
Ah, ça va très bien. Je suis arrivé ce matin un peu tôt, avec un vol de 7h du matin, mais c'est parfait.
C'est ce que j'ai cru savoir.
J'ai pris une petite demi-heure de repos à l'hôtel et
c'était fluide à l'aéroport, tout va bien.
Voilà. Je ne sais pas si c'est votre présence, mais là, je suis en super forme là, maintenant.
Alors, merci en tout cas d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. Alors, ça vient vraiment à propos parce que on l'a suffisamment répété et puis on rate jamais l'occasion de dire la fierté que nous avons, nous, en tant que Marocains, d'accueillir aussi bien la Coupe d'Afrique des Nations dans 4 semaines, la Coupe du Monde en 2030. Et l'idée, c'est justement de pouvoir partager avec vous, en tout cas recueillir toute l'expérience d'Accor dans l'accompagnement de grands projets sportifs. Alors moi, quand je voyais Accor Sport, j'ai tout de suite pensé à Accor Arena, Palais Omnisport de Bercy, qui était l'Accor Hotel Arena. Après, c'est devenu l'Accor Arena. Mais là, c'est pas seulement le sponsoring dont on va parler, c'est justement l'accompagnement de grands événements sportifs. Déjà, pourquoi le sport et pourquoi accompagner les événements sportifs au niveau d'Accor?
Alors, il est vrai, vous avez raison, le sport a toujours été dans l'ADN du groupe Accor depuis très très longtemps, depuis des décennies. D'abord parce que c'est un véhicule de communication qui est absolument incroyable pour nous, et puis le sport porte certaines valeurs que nous souhaitons véhiculer auprès de nos employés, auprès de nos partenaires, auprès de toutes les communautés dans lesquelles nous intervenons. Ce qui est intéressant, c'est que quand on regarde finalement notre cœur de métier, notre business, nous aujourd'hui, nous sommes dans l'hospitalité bien sûr, donc nous faisons des réservations d'hôtels, nous faisons du housekeeping, nous faisons de la conciergerie, et finalement, on se rend compte qu'effectivement, toutes ces qualités, tous ces du groupe peuvent tout à fait se transposer dans des expériences extérieures et éphémères. Et notamment dans l'organisation de grands événements sportifs. Donc, c'est notre travail de tous les jours. Nous accueillons les gens, nous organisons des événements, donc nous pouvons tout à fait transposer ces valeurs-là, ces qualités-là, pour des événements extérieurs. C'est vraiment, on s'est rendu compte de ça depuis déjà quelques années. Donc, Accor est devenu un vrai spécialiste de l'organisation de ces événements à différents niveaux. Alors, quand on dit vrai spécialiste, attention, nous n'organisons pas le côté client-spectateur qui va dans le stade. Nous, c'est plutôt tout ce qui est, je veux dire, en back-office de l'hôtel, de l'organisation. C'est-à-dire que tous les événements, tout ce qui est créé pour le staff, pour les sponsors, pour les fans, pour les médias, ou autres, tous les partenaires qui participent à l'ensemble de ces événements, nous sommes devenus spécialistes de la logistique pour l'ensemble de ces acteurs des grands éléments, des grands événements. Alors, nous avons des task force en interne. C'est très intéressant parce qu'avant cet entretien, j'ai eu quelques coups de téléphone en interne avec quelques personnes pour qu'ils partagent un petit peu leur expérience. Et on se rend compte que, par exemple, sur les Jeux Olympiques, il y avait presque 300 personnes en task force, en fait, sur cet événement-là. Ces personnes sont toujours dans le groupe, aujourd'hui avec des fonctions différentes, mais prêts à partir, à rebondir pour un nouvel événement. Et on se rend compte que c'était pour eux une aventure humaine absolument incroyable. Ils sont passionnés par ce qu'ils ont fait. Donc aujourd'hui, nous avons la faculté d'intervenir dans ces grands événements de manière rapide, avec des gens qualifiés et avec des outils dont on va parler en fait qui sont très performants.
Alors justement, on va parler voir de quelle manière en détail vous intervenez, parce que c'est vrai que ça peut paraître un peu pas abstrait, mais en tout cas se demander dans quel compartiment vous intervenez de manière extrêmement précise. Alors revenons sur les événements. Vous avez parlé des Jeux Olympiques, bien sûr. Je crois qu'il y a eu la Coupe du Monde de rugby. Ça, c'est vraiment les grands événements. Quels autres événements ou quels sont les événements que vous avez fait dernièrement et avec lesquels vous avez commencé?
Alors, il y a 3 axes. Il y a l'axe sponsoring, où là on est très présent sur l'événement, Roland-Garros, beaucoup de tournois de tennis, tout ce qui est la Coupe de l'Amérique, beaucoup d'activités liées à la voile en fait, à l'international ou accord et sponsor de ces événements-là. Bien entendu aussi le naming des stades, hein, ça c'est quelque chose qui est très important pour nous. Accor Arena, mais aussi Sydney Stadium, enfin le stade principal à Sydney, qui est l'Accor Stadium. Donc ça c'est quelque chose aussi qui est très porteur en termes de communication. Et puis l'organisation là en direct d'événements internationaux. Alors c'est vrai que si on regarde les années précédentes, on a commencé principalement, en fait avec au Qatar, c'est 2022, hein, la Coupe du Monde. Donc là, nous avons participé à l'organisation de la logistique pour la Coupe du Monde au Qatar. Ensuite, on a enchaîné sur la Coupe du Monde de rugby en France, où là, on a fait différentes choses. Hein, c'était plus côté réservation. Et puis, bien entendu, les Jeux Olympiques en 2024. Donc, on a eu 3 années consécutives avec des événements internationaux importants pour lesquels Accor a été non seulement un partenaire en termes de sponsoring, mais également en termes d'acteurs actifs dans tout ce qui est gestion de la logistique, des infrastructures et du personnel.
Alors justement, là, ce qui est peut-être intéressant, c'est de voir où est-ce que vous intervenez. Alors, quand je suis un peu allé me documenter, c'est vrai que ça va assez loin quand même, parce que notamment dans les Jeux Olympiques, je crois savoir que vous étiez là en amont on parle des villages éphémères, donc vous mettez votre expertise en termes d'optimisation, de besoins en termes de logement, c'est bien ça? Et quels sont en fait, voilà, les compartiments sur lesquels vous intervenez de manière concrète?
Alors, finalement, il y a si on devait résumer, 4 expertises un peu différentes. La première, elle est... alors, on parlera après de la réservation, parce que vous parlez des Jeux Olympiques, on est plutôt sur, effectivement, la gestion du parc de logement. Alors, logement pour qui? Le logement principalement pour le staff, pour les fans, pour les relations publiques, pour les sponsors, en tout cas toutes les personnes qui sont accréditées. Donc là, il y a toute une infrastructure qui est énorme pour l'organisation des Jeux Olympiques. Il faut savoir que ces Jeux Olympiques, Accor a géré directement plus de 82 000 logements. Alors, ce sont des logements qui ont été construits pour les Jeux Olympiques, mais qui ont eu un usage pendant cette période-là, mais qui, bien entendu, après, ont été ou vendus ou loués, sont rentrés dans le parc d'habitation de logements traditionnels. Donc 82 000 logements, c'est énorme. C'est une logistique qui était assez incroyable. Alors, non seulement au niveau de... Donc il y a tout le housekeeping, le linge derrière, la gestion de petit déjeuner, que l'on fait en partenariat avec Potel et Chabot, qui est une de nos filiales, hein, qui s'occupe de tout ce qui est restauration. Donc sur la période des Jeux Olympiques, je pense qu'on a servi quelque chose comme 80 000 petits déjeuners en fait, hein, aux personnes sur place. Donc c'est la gestion de toute cette infrastructure, notamment la gestion de ce parc hôtelier, et notamment des réservations, hein, pour ces personnes. Et on n'en a pas parlé, c'est également la gestion pour tous les athlètes. Hein. On parle de tout ce qui est presse ou autre, mais c'est bien entendu les athlètes. Dans d'autres événements, ce sont les équipes sportives, mais la gestion des athlètes et de tous les accompagnements en termes de réservation, logement, avec différents critères, différentes catégories. Donc tout ça est assez complexe. Mais on le fait notamment avec notre outil de gestion qui est Risa Event, dont on peut dire peut-être quelques mots maintenant. Mais les Jeux Olympiques, ça a été quelque chose d'assez incroyable. Plus de 700 personnes d'accord qui ont été directement impliquées, et puis un recrutement de tout le personnel également pour la gestion de ce parc.
Évidemment, quand on est sur un événement comme ça, alors on va faire la différence entre les Jeux Olympiques et la Coupe du Monde, parce que la Coupe du Monde aussi, ça nous intéresse de voir comment vous pouvez intervenir sur la Coupe du Monde. Vous intervenez en amont. Combien de mois avant? Vous êtes vous êtes impliqué dans le comité organisateur sur un certain niveau?
On est impliqué, notamment, c'est intéressant parce que sur les Jeux Olympiques, on a parlé de logement pour tout ce qui est, back office des événements, mais ce sont également les réservations d'hôtels pour ces gens-là. C'est pas uniquement donc les hébergements traditionnels appartements. Donc il faut savoir que les organisateurs de Paris 2024 donc ont eux acheté, bloqué des allotements dans les hôtels. Et nous avons géré en fait ces allotements et nous les avons distribués. Donc on les distribue de quelle manière? En utilisant notre outil qui est Risa Event. Risa Event qui est vraiment une plateforme incroyable qui a été développée donc en 2023 pour la Coupe du Monde de rugby et qui est un outil qui est une sorte de marque blanche en termes d'outils de réservation. Sur la Coupe du Monde de rugby, ce qui était la première fois que l'outil a été développé, on parle de plus de 700 hôtels qui étaient connectés. Possibilité, on s'était développé avec notre filiale Jeco, qui est spécialisée dans tout ce qui est loyalty et distribution. Donc, ils ont développé un outil avec une interface qui permet de se connecter très facilement à tous les systèmes IT de tous les hôtels, de toutes les centrales de réservation, des tours opérateurs, ce qui nous a permis de gérer parfaitement ce parc hôtelier pendant la période des Jeux Olympiques. Ouais.
Alors, vous avez parlé de loyalty, et ça me vient de... Nécessairement, on va parler du programme de fidélité de Accor, All, donc qui est Accor Live Limitless. Comment vous l'avez intégré, comment vous l'avez utilisé, et de quelle manière, finalement, ça a servi ce type de prise en charge d'événements?
Il faut savoir que nous, la participation à ces événements-là, d'abord, on a un vrai savoir-faire, donc on le propose. C'est une activité du groupe comme une autre. Ce hall, en fait, est le centre névralgique un petit peu de cette organisation. C'est-à-dire que nous communiquons par le biais notamment de Hall. Il faut savoir que Hall, aujourd'hui, c'est plus de 100 millions de clients membres dans le monde. Nous avons besoin de fournir à nos membres Hall des possibilités, des expériences qui sont exceptionnelles, qui sont nouvelles. Un client Accor qui reste dans un hôtel qui est membre de Hall va pouvoir bénéficier de places attitrées lors d'événements de Jeux Olympiques, de Coupe du Monde ou autres, plus des événements immersifs qui sont dont personne d'autre n'a accès, c'est-à-dire à pouvoir aller dans les vestiaires, pouvoir côtoyer des athlètes dans les loges, avoir des véritables expériences. Donc, nous créons des expériences au travers du programme Hall pour notre clientèle, également pour nos partenaires, pour les propriétaires d'hôtels qui effectivement bénéficient également de système loyalty. Donc communication par programme Hall avec un bénéfice qui est certain pour tous nos membres c'est vraiment notre axe de communication.
Alors ma dernière question, elle sera simple, c'est vu l'expertise que vous avez sur ces grands événements, on a des événements qui arrivent. Est-ce que vous auriez des conseils à donner, finalement, aux hôteliers pour une période pareille? Comment on optimise, comment on fait face à de tels événements?
Alors oui, c'était assez intéressant parce qu'en parlant différents intervenants en interne qui ont vécu un peu ces périodes-là, notamment également au Qatar, où nous avons un certain nombre d'hôtels où là, on n'a pas parlé, mais c'est vrai qu'on a été au cœur de l'organisation de la Coupe du Monde. Effectivement, je me suis rendu compte qu'il y avait certaines choses qui revenaient assez fréquemment. La première chose, c'est que quand on reçoit une Coupe du Monde, les hôteliers sont sollicités, il y a des appels d'offres pour recevoir notamment les équipes sportives ou d'autres types de partenaires. Ça peut être la presse, ça peut être les sponsors, ça peut être différents types de personnes, de clientèle accréditées. Et c'est vrai que la tarification est souvent pas la même. C'est-à-dire que quand vous allez avec une équipe, vous avez souvent la possibilité de vendre à des tarifs qui sont très élevés. Donc c'est souvent très attrayant, mais il y a un vrai risque, c'est un peu la loterie, parce qu'il y a des phases éliminatoires et ça peut s'arrêter très rapidement. Et le jour où l'équipe part, je peux vous dire que du jour au lendemain, votre hôtel est vide et vous êtes sorti de l'inventaire de la FIFA, et donc après, c'est une période un petit peu plus douloureuse. Par contre, vous avez vendu à des tarifs qui sont en général très élevés. L'autre possibilité, c'est d'aller vers effectivement des partenaires qui vont vous sécuriser un business sur toute la période de la Coupe du Monde, presse ou autre, peut-être à des tarifs qui sont différents, mais sur le long terme. Et voilà. Alors après, chacun choisit son mode de fonctionnement, mais en tout cas, en parlant de nos équipes opérationnelles, eux recommandaient fortement d'aller vers la sécurité sur une période le plus longue possible, parce qu'il y a eu des aventures un petit peu compliquées pour certains. Et puis le deuxième point qui est intéressant également, c'est par rapport à vos clients loyaux, les clients qui reviennent chez vous de manière fréquente, qui viennent chaque année. Savoir que quand il y a un événement de ce type-là, ces clients-là ont envie de venir dans votre hôtel. Ils ont l'habitude de venir tous les ans, vous les connaissez, ils dépensent beaucoup d'argent dans vos établissements, ils ont envie de venir pendant cette période-là, et il y a beaucoup d'établissements qui, effectivement, non, écoutez, je suis plein, j'ai vendu à l'équipe, j'ai vendu à autres, je suis désolé, pour vous, cette année, c'est pas possible.
Faut pas les oublier, ceux-là.
Voilà, faut pas les oublier, il y a une vie après la Coupe du Monde, et je peux vous dire que aussi certains ont fait cette expérience en finalement refusant ces clients loyaux qui revenaient, et puis ils ont eu du mal quand même à les retrouver après. C'est vrai qu'on a reçu beaucoup de clients à des tarifs très élevés pour une période assez courte, mais derrière, La vie continue après la Coupe du Monde, faire attention au niveau de la dentaire, faire plaisir aussi à ses clients, même si vous leur vendez cher, mais quand même garder ces clientèles un peu qui est loyale, qui revient chaque année, qui est importante et qui continuera de revenir les années suivantes.
Ouais, donc grosse opportunité, mais il y a une vie après la Coupe du Monde et ça il faut
Exactement.
il faut le souligner. Merci beaucoup Xavier
Avec grand plaisir.
pour votre expertise, pour applaudir Xavier Grange et merci d'être venu pour partager avec nous tous ces points. So let me go back to English and okay, let's continue by talking with a very important topic. That's the role of F&B in the hotels and in hotels, mixed-use development and mega events. Please welcome Mr. Daniel Morgan, Managing Partner of TJP International.
Well, thank you very much. Great to be back here again this year, and going to be talking to you a little bit today about F&B. And I'm going to touch on a few areas today. We're going to touch on the role of F&B in hotels. We're going to touch about the role of F&B in mixed-use developments, and also touch on a little bit about mega events as well. Some of this will blend into what we call F&B master planning, but we'll run through that when we get to it. First of all, we'll do a little bit of stats, but obviously start with, you know, probably what is most important to TGP as a sort of consultant. When we're developing F&B strategy, obviously it's really about the partners that we work with. And obviously, you know, we like to start with obviously some of the brands, the chefs that we work with in our various mixed-use developments, and then obviously our partners at the international events. So whether it's a big Expo 2020 or a COP28, or, you know, a World Cup, F1, you know, we wouldn't be able to do it fundamentally without our partners. Of course, we collaborate with all of the industry leaders, or most of the industry leaders, some of which are, you know, here today in the room, certainly from the hotel groups, but we also work with asset owners, developers, and obviously governmental as well, in terms of, especially in terms of course, you know, delivering the sort of giga projects then. So, just some regional growth trends, and I hope I don't get into trouble for getting some of these wrong. Of course, we hear that Morocco's targeting 26 million annual visitors or tourists by 2030. Of course, that's, you know, aided with, you know, a rather large event coming up, as we know, in terms of co-hosting, you know, the World Cup, which is an incredible opportunity. From what I've heard today, that's probably going to be more, because we've just heard that next year is going to be 20 million. So, you know, perhaps that's exceeded. So, incredible numbers in terms of growth, in terms of driving tourism. You know, I'm based in the Dubai office. You know, we're at 20 million tourists there a year. So, you know, we know what that does in terms of numbers. Another stat, 76% of global consumers believe that cities must offer new experience that, you know, to remain relevant. And we're going to touch on this a little bit as well in terms of curation, especially from an F&B perspective. It's really important to us and really important with gastro-tourism to touch on these points. Of course, globally, 53% of leisure travelers now identify as food travelers, which makes sense, right? Everyone gets excited about, you know, going to a new destination, trying a new experience, and it's often F&B related. Obviously, those experiences generate around 25% additional economic benefits for destinations. You know, it really places now F&B at the forefront in terms of being a sort of a real anchor. You know, historically, F&B was really a secondary or afterthought. You know, now we're often the first people in the room to discuss strategy. What are we going to do? How do we create a sense of place? So rethinking F&B's role as a major events, and we're going to we'll touch on major events first and come back to sort of more hotels. F&B sales are the largest revenue source for event organisers after ticket sales. Of course, that makes sense. You know, but, you know, often people think it's merchandise. It's not. It's F&B, the second biggest generator. And if we look at the big companies now that are put, like at OVG, for example, they own that space. They own that vertical integration around F&B. You know, they see so much value in it. That's the true driver, and that's the true differentiator about going to an event. It's the F&B, right? Because you can go to a concert anywhere. You can go to a football match anywhere. But one of the key differentiators is absolutely F&B. The F&B segment is the fastest growing revenue stream in event tourism market. You know, there's an annual growth rate of around 8.5%. It's one of the key areas in terms of driving additional revenue. You know, as I said, F&B used to be a little bit further down the list. Now we're right at the top with the event organisers. Sorry, I skipped, my apologies. F&B is a footfall driver. So restaurant operators in the UAE specifically, of course, a huge, you know, a city that's very well known for the quality of its F&B. Projected 2 billion dirhams in food and beverage on-site sales during Expo 2020 Dubai. Having operated Expo 2020 Dubai, I know that we exceeded that. Food and beverage. Sorry. My apologies. No wonder everyone's looking at me thinking I'm a bit strange. Is this an internet issue, guys? Okay. So we've got it. 2 billion dirhams in food and beverage on-site sales during Expo 2020. As the operators of Expo 2020 F&B, we far exceeded that. And it just shows how important it is. As I say, it's a revenue driver. Food and beverage are among the most cost-effective tools for increasing dwell time. Who doesn't want extended dwell time? Who doesn't want extended visitation? Spend per head, visitor satisfaction at large-scale events. Done well, F&B becomes an experience itself. It's not just a necessity. And that's where obviously we're seeing, you know, huge change. Another point that, you know, we often touch on around Expo 2020, and, you know, we were very lucky to have API out there last week, and Murray brought some guests out from Africa. We did a tour, is around the legacy point. Is around the legacy point. You can't create a city the size of what was created for Expo 2020 without having legacy. You know, we talk about what we're going to do with that space after it's finished. What are we going to do with it? You know, it's a huge investment. And, you know, we also just went through the same thing in Osaka. Creating that legacy is everything about what we do. You know, that can be done, obviously, through events and through just wait for these stats to come up. Okay. What did we do legacy-wise? We delivered COP28, incredibly successful, with real cultural sort of, you know, sensitivity, diversity in menus, VIP catering, and obviously, you know, a quote here from Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, the president of COP28, in terms of what was delivered for that world-class event. So it was over 1 million meals served in a 2-week period, 275,000 transactions, 136 F&B outlets, 2,500 catering orders, and 5,000 plus events, VIP events hosted. And that's quite some delivery, all in 2 weeks. And of course, I touched on at the beginning, you can't do it without incredible partners. So I still think we've got a tech issue because the rest of it isn't displaying. In addition to that, we had 27 restaurants and cafes, 33 food trucks, 2 food halls, 6 food parks, 39 carts and 29 kiosks. It's the one touch point that everyone feels in a major event like that. It's the one thing that everybody can relate to. Everybody in this room, every visitor, everybody had a catering-led experience. Just keep clicking. Okay. Okay, cool. So F&B, the second engine of mega events. For Expo 2020 Dubai, the restaurants and hotel sector alone estimated to contribute 23.1 billion of gross added value to the UAE economy. It's huge. It's a huge number. And as we see similar growth in Morocco, you'd see similar stats come from the sector. For FIFA World Cup, Qatar 22, spending inside the venue showed 36% of transactions were on F&B. It's the second largest category outside of merchandise. That's a stat that sits outside of usual events. Of course, merch for a World Cup is huge, but still third largest in terms of revenue generation. It's certainly something that needs to be considered. I'm going to touch now on how you develop the outcome then. We've looked at the stats, we've looked at, a couple of case studies, we've talked about the expos, we've talked about a COP, we've talked about a World Cup. So TGP, of course, we're a 360 degree hospitality company. So we do all of those touch points, initial strategy, feasibility. We're working on Serbia at the moment. We're also working on Expo in Riyadh. And we develop the strategy, we integrate the brands, we create the experiences, and then we oversee all operations. So as part of that strategy, the first stage really is looking at that F&B master planning. And if we think about that, I think historically people looked at F&B master planning like, how do we cater to the masses? How do we feed thousands of people? What's the most efficient way to do it? And of course, that's often using, no disrespect to catering companies, they certainly have their place and we're very close to many. But they don't often talk about a sense of place, a sense of the city, the sense of the people. And so as part of that sort of master planning, we always look at it from a sort of curation perspective. So we'd look at obviously bringing in, the local heroes in the market. Who can we bring in? Who are the top operators in the market then? Who are the most, not necessarily successful, they could be, heroes that just resonate with the local population that people visiting will want to try. It's not about who pays the most rent or how you squeeze most out of each, vendor, which I think is more of a sort of traditional way. I think that it's about looking at how you can curate an experience that talks to everybody. So, designing for emerging dining behaviours. This is interesting. And I know we touched on this sort of curation piece previously, but here, we talk about a little bit about what, how we go a little bit further than that. We've got a great team that we work with, and these are often sort of 4 key anchors that they will, look at. So one being around social wellness, and I think this can resonate, I hope, with most people in the room. A quarter of adults experience feelings of social isolation. And, while 5 to 15% of adolescents experience feelings of loneliness. And I'm not sure whether that's got to do with everybody having their phone in their hand, but I'm assuming that might be one of the reasons. And one thing we all, I'm sure, love to do is sit around the table with our friends, our families, and experience hospitality, dining. It resonates with everybody, or I hope resonates with everybody. So social wellness, certainly something that we always take into consideration. How to bring people together in a dining environment. We certainly don't want to separate. We do a lot with developing food halls. It's the one common social denominator. Everybody eats together, and we love that. Experiential and immersive. 72% of diners are seeking a more experiential dining options, such as chef's tables, themed events, and interactive culinary experiences. Again, something that we work a lot on, that whole immersive, really important. Probably not as important for me as the social wellness aspect. And then third, placemaking. And this is, I touched on this again, the curation piece. 80% of the respondents agree that a strong sense of place is important to them, while only 66% feel strongly connected to their local community. So you've got to have community. It's got to have a sense of place. You've got to employ people from the community. You've got to bring in the heroes within the community. It's not about bringing in big brands. We don't need to see these big global brands constantly. It's absolutely not a requirement, and neither should it be. Tailored touch points, of course. So there's a stat, 63% of global consumers seek curated and tailored experiences, and that's probably a blend, I would say, of all those three. So just some, fairly interesting stats there. Right, I'm going to touch on a bit of hotel F&B. I'll go through this fairly quickly because we've probably got some hoteliers in the room. How to maximize the potential of hotel F&B. Of course, this is really, really simple stuff. Treat F&B as a value generator, embed dining deeply into the guest experience, build loyalty through distinct and localized dining, and use F&B to differentiate your brand through whether that's marketing or PR. I'll leave the other stats. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I think that the key thing here is that I spend a lot of time in hotels, and the only thing that makes a difference to me is the F&B. And everyone I speak to pretty much says the same. I mean, the rooms at a certain level tend to be fairly similar to the amenities. I mean, I do have a preference. I won't tell you that because I don't want to upset anyone. The big thing for me is I'll go and stay somewhere now on two things, and this is the big thing I'm hearing about. I'm not here to talk about wellness today, but that is a huge trend. Of course, it's F&B, and I think that wellness as well. People are looking at a great gym, some great facilities, but for me, F&B is absolutely key. What makes a great F&B concept? So simple, or we like to think so. So simple I should be out of a job, perhaps. This is what we often bring to our clients, and when we talk about the simplicity of how to create something that resonates with guests, and we sort of say personality, fairly simple, not just the run-of-the-mill designed by the same people that do the rooms, something with personality that sets you apart. Clear positioning. Great food and beverage, isn't that so simple to say? But great quality F&B. Interior design, of course. Strategic branding and detailing. Of course, the atmospherics, how that room works. It being customer focused. Imagine that, a restaurant that's customer focused. I go to so many places and it just seems to be so much of it, not that. Strong leadership, again. Somewhere that I think people are perhaps guilty of. Marketing, and of course, selfishly desirable. So, key takeaways. Repositioning F&B from fuel to refuel, to footfall driver and strategic legacy asset. We believe F&B's evolved from a functional necessity to a key driver of experience footfall and a long-term economic impact at major events, and it's proven, and I believe we've been a part of proving it. With the F&B segment, the fastest growing revenue stream in event tourism market is F&B. It's a clear stat. We can see the direction of travel. Integration, strategy, master planning, event execution, legacy and activation. F&B, it takes a 360-degree approach from the initial vision, through the curation, through the activation, and then of course through operations. And one point, is often missed. Legacy. What are you leaving it with? What are you talking about after the event? What is it giving back to the city? And then bringing in F&B, bringing the F&B concept in at master planning stages is critical. And, you know, we're finding more and more that this is happening at the earlier stages of planning rather than being brought in last minute to sort the mess out, which is, of course, great for us. Ensure storytelling and vision are embedded from the start, shaping a cohesive experience. For FIFA 2030, Morocco must align hotel F&B strategy with mega event execution to deliver a seamless visitor experience and lasting legacy. And I am sure that will happen. And to leave you on just our final slide, and thank you very much for listening, of course, is something that you might be able to scan and download, which is a little sort of trends report. This time I've chosen mega events trends report, but if you click on that link or if you open that link up, you'll be able to see that and hopefully some other trend reports that we've got as well at TGP. So thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. And I confirm I'm part of the 82%. I spend 10 weeks a year. F&B is crucial for me. Talking about F&B, let's have a coffee break, a 20-minute coffee break, and then we'll be back for another session. Thank you.